You ever see those folks dressed like Santa at the mall? Kids laughing, candy canes everywhere, Christmas songs on loop. Looks warm, right? Well, behind that red suit was Ethan Blake, the man everybody called a billionaire genius. The guy Forbes wrote about like he was untouchable. Yet he sat alone in a luxury office every night like walls were his only friend. 42, sharp jaw, fancy watch, had a penthouse high above the city, but not a single soul to say Merry Christmas to. And that's how this story begins, not with joy, but with a man who had everything except someone waiting for him at home. Snow was falling thick, the usual postcard-perfect December night. Streets glowing with fairy lights and kids tugging their parents toward toy stores, everyone buzzing with holiday magic. Meanwhile, Ethan stood backstage of a charity mall event, wearing a Santa suit that cost more than most people's rent, tugging at the itchy beard and mumbling, "Why the hell did I agree to this?" His assistant had begged him, "PR boost, sir, just one night." Smile, wave, shake hands. A CEO acting like Santa? Cute for headlines, good for investors. But Ethan didn't care about headlines tonight. He looked in the mirror, and all he saw was a man pretending he wasn't lonely, pretending the success filled the hole his ex-wife left when she walked out, saying, "You love your work more than me." And maybe she was right. He watched families laugh through the mall glass, and that invisible ache in his chest shoved deeper than he liked to admit. He shook it off, plastered a smile, walked onto the stage with a ho-ho-ho that felt more like, "Help me, help me." Kids rushed him, parents snapping photos, music blasting Jingle Bell Rock, but after the crowd faded and the mall lights dimmed, he found himself sitting alone on a bench outside with a half-cold coffee, staring at the night like it owed him answers. He thought he'd slip away quietly, head back to his penthouse where silence echoed louder than any party, where he'd microwave dinner and call it Christmas. But destiny doesn't text first. It just walks up wearing sparkly boots and a teddy bear backpack. Because out of nowhere, this tiny voice chimed behind him, soft but curious, like she could see right through his Santa suit and into his tired soul. "Santa, why are you sitting alone outside?" Ethan blinked, turned, and saw her, a little girl, maybe 6, brown curls peeking from a red beanie, cheeks rosy from the cold, looking at him like he was someone worth caring about. And for a moment, this powerful CEO forgot his speech, forgot his loneliness, forgot everything except the sincerity in those big brown eyes. He forced a smile, but she saw right through it, kids always do. "Aren't Santas supposed to be happy?" she asked, head tilted like she had the right to judge his emotional state. Ethan chuckled a little, a real laugh for the first time all day, and tried to answer, but the words caught in his throat. "Because how do you tell a kid you're drowning in everything money can't fix?" Before he could speak, the girl stretched out her arm like offering peace to a broken world. She held a squished Christmas cookie wrapped in a napkin. "You shouldn't be alone," she said softly. "Mommy says Christmas is for sharing." And that simple sentence, that tiny act, hit harder than all the business deals he'd ever closed. Imagine standing on a snowy sidewalk dressed like Santa, and a 6-year-old offers you kindness when nobody else even sees you. Yeah, that was Ethan's moment. He took the cookie not because he was hungry, but because no one had given him anything that looked like care in a long time. "Thank you," he murmured, voice rough like it hadn't spoken warmth in years. The girl grinned, gap-toothed, pure sunshine, and plopped down beside him like she owned the sidewalk. "I'm Mia," she announced, kicking her boots against the snowy curb. "And you look like Santa who forgot to be happy. My mommy says smiles need practice." Ethan couldn't help it. He laughed again, shaking his head. "I think your mommy's right," he said. And before he could ask where her parents were, a woman jogged over breathless, hair messy under a wool hat, cheeks flushed like she'd been running through holiday chaos. "Mia, sweetheart! You can't just walk up to strangers," she scolded gently, eyes flicking up to Ethan, Santa suit and all, and freezing for a second. He expected fear or suspicion. Instead, she sighed, embarrassed, tucking her hair behind her ear. "I'm so sorry, sir. She's friendly with literally everyone. Sometimes too friendly." Ethan waved it off. "Trust me, it's fine. She just saved me from freezing alone with my thoughts." The woman, Sophie, offered a tired smile that somehow felt warmer than the mall lights behind them. Clothes modest, hands chapped from winter work. clearly holding life together with grit instead of luck. She scooped Mia up, but the girl wrapped her arms around Ethan's red sleeve stubbornly. "Santa's coming to our house," she declared proudly, like they had already signed a contract. Sophie nearly choked. "Mia, sweetheart, and he's busy. He has jobs and reindeer things." But Mia shook her head. Eyes locked on Ethan with a sincerity that could melt the Arctic. "No, he's lonely. I can tell, and nobody should be lonely on Christmas." "You said that." Sophie flushed, caught by her own wisdom. Ethan felt something tug inside, soft, unfamiliar, terrifying. And right there, the cold, closed-off CEO found himself asking, "Maybe just a walk to your building?" "It's late. Roads are slippery." Sophie hesitated, stranger danger and all. But then she saw Mia's hopeful face, Ethan's gentle, honest eyes, and something shifted. "Just to the building," she said firmly. "Not inside." And so there they walked. Santa, a tired young mother and a girl with a cookie crumb smile. Through snowy streets like a Hallmark scene, nobody scripted. Snowflakes landed on Sophie's hair. City lights reflected in Mia's boots, and Ethan, he felt human again. By the time they reached their small apartment building, something unexpected happened. Mia tugged Ethan's hand, turned to her mother with the boldness only children carry, and whispered the sentence that changed everything. "Mommy." "Can Santa come inside? Just for one night? We can share dinner." Sophie froze. Ethan froze. The world seemed to pause with them, snow falling slow like time. Wanted to watch what he'd answer. He could have said no, kept walking, returned to his glass-cold penthouse where nobody waited. But instead, his voice came out soft. "If it's okay, I'd like that." And that's when this ordinary Christmas Eve flipped into a story worth remembering. Because sometimes, the right people don't arrive wrapped in perfection. They show up in boots with melted snow, holding crushed cookies, asking Santa for company. And you won't believe what happened next. How one small home, one tired mother and one little girl, turned a lonely billionaire into something he never thought he'd be. Again, loved, wanted family. But hold that thought. Because what happened the moment he stepped through that door? Oh man, that's where everything truly begins. When Ethan stepped inside Sophie's tiny apartment, it felt like he'd walked into a different universe. Not polished, not marble floors or glass walls like his penthouse, but a home that smelled like cinnamon, old wood, and something he'd forgotten he loved: comfort. The living room was small, couch a little worn, but Christmas lights hung all, zigzag across the walls like happiness. Didn't need to be neat to be real. A paper snowflake banner drooped at one end, obviously cut by little kid hands, and a half-decorated mini-tree sat in the corner. Ornaments mismatched but meaningful. The kind you buy with heart, not money. Mia rushed in like she owned the place and dragged Ethan by the sleeve straight to the tree. "Santa needs to finish decorating," she declared, handing him a glittery star with so many sequins it practically blinded him. Sophie opened her mouth like she should stop her. Stranger? Boundaries. But her voice softened when she saw Ethan carefully kneel and let Mia placed the star in his hand like it was something sacred. "Up top!" Mia grinned. Ethan reached up, tall enough to place it without a stool. And for some reason, when that star clicked into place, the room felt brighter. Sophie blinked, arms folded, watching a billionaire, Santa, help her daughter decorate like he'd always been part of their holidays. Maybe it was the glow of the lights, or maybe the slow realization that this man didn't act superior or distant, but warm in ways she didn't expect. "We were just about to heat dinner," she said gently, still cautious. "It's simple, chicken soup and garlic bread." "Not exactly 5-star? Ethan smiled, something sincere blooming in his voice. "After the microwave meals I eat alone? This sounds like a feast." He meant it. Not polite meant it, real meant it. Sophie's eyes softened, surprised. She moved to the tiny kitchen, worn cabinets and all, and Ethan noticed the chipped mug on the counter, the sticky note reminding her to pay rent, the tiredness in her shoulders from juggling work and motherhood without help. He wanted to help carry the pot, but she laughed and said, "You're Santa." "Not a sous chef. Sit." So he sat, and Mia plopped onto his knee like she'd known him her whole life. "Do you like cookies?" she asked out of nowhere. I love them, he said. But the kind you shared earlier might be unbeatable. Mia leaned close like she was sharing top-secret intel. Mommy makes better ones on Christmas Day. You have to stay till tomorrow to try. Sophie nearly dropped the spoon. Mia! She whisper-shouted, cheeks flushing. Ethan just chuckled, surprised how easily this little family pulled him in. Dinner was served, mismatched plates, chipped bowls, steam rising in soft swirls. And when Ethan took the first bite, something in him unclenched. Simple, warm, seasoned with love instead of price. He didn't rush. He didn't check his phone. He didn't think about corporate numbers or quarter results. He was present, fully, something he hadn't felt in years. Mia told stories about school. Her best friend Ava, how she wanted a puppy, but Mommy said, maybe when life stops being expensive. Sophie laughed, embarrassed, but Ethan said softly, maybe miracles come when you least expect them. Sophie met his eyes. Really met them, like she hadn't met a man who spoke gently in a long time. And he wondered, when did loneliness become normal for both of them? Because suddenly, sharing soup at a small table felt richer than champagne galas ever. And after dinner, Mia dragged out a cardboard box of old ornaments and a Santa hat missing its puffball, insisting Ethan wear it crooked and ridiculous. He didn't complain, not when her laughter filled the room like bells. They decorated more, sang badly to Christmas songs from Sophie's cracked speaker, and when Silent Night played low, soft, something shifted. Ethan found himself watching Sophie as she tucked a curl behind her ear, her eyes shining under the warm lights. She looked peaceful for a moment instead of tired, like she forgot the weight of bills and double shifts. And Ethan, who'd signed deals worth millions without blinking, suddenly felt nervous offering to help hang another ornament. Because feelings, real ones, were scarier than business. Sophie caught his stare and looked away quickly, cheeks pink, like she felt it too. Mia jumped in the middle, grabbing his gloved hand, yelling, "Time for Christmas magic!" and ran to her room, returning with a shoebox wrapped in newspaper. Inside, paper wishes, scribbled with crayon, her Christmas list. "Pick one," she ordered. "Santa has to grant at least one wish tonight." Ethan's throat tightened. Wishes like a bike, new shoes, Mommy can rest, a real family dinner, someone to read to me at night. Small wishes most kids take for granted. He swallowed, picking one gently. His voice read it quiet. "I wish Santa could stay, so Mommy doesn't have to be lonely anymore." The room went still. Sophie froze. Mia looked hopeful without understanding the weight of her words. Ethan inhaled slow, chest tight. No business negotiation had ever hit like that. "You don't know what you're asking." "Sweetheart," Sophie whispered, voice shaking slightly. Mia insisted. "Santa has a big heart. He can stay." Ethan looked at Sophie. Really looked, and saw strength stitched with exhaustion. Love stitched with sacrifice. She'd been doing everything alone, too. Maybe they were more alike than different. He leaned close to Mia, voice warm. "How about Santa stays for Coco? Then we see what tomorrow brings?" Mia squealed and ran to get marshmallows. Sophie stayed still, eyes locked with Ethan's. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "You don't owe us anything." He shook his head slowly. "Maybe I owe myself something. A night that feels like Christmas." They drank cocoa on the couch, Mia asleep between them, tiny head on Ethan's shoulder. Sophie handed him a blanket. Fingers brushing his, electricity so soft he barely breathed. In the quiet glow of the tree, Ethan whispered, barely audible. "I didn't know I needed this," Sophie replied, voice cracking. "Neither did I." Snow fell outside like a blessing. The world hushed around them. And Ethan realized this wasn't charity. This wasn't pity. It was connection. A moment that could change everything if he had the courage to follow it. And just when the lullaby of silence settled, Mia mumbled, half dreaming, "Santa, please stay forever." Sophie's eyes glistened. Ethan's heart clenched. And instead of slipping out the door like he'd planned, he tucked the blanket around Mia gently, like she was his own, because tonight wasn't about wealth or status. It was about a little girl who saw a lonely man and decided he deserved love. But what happens when Christmas morning comes? When real life knocks? When fear and hope collide? Hold that, because the next chapter is where everything gets tested. Morning snuck in slow and golden, sunlight dripping through the cheap blinds like honey over the sleepy room. Ethan woke up on the small couch, neck stiff. Santa hat still crooked on his head, and the first thing he saw wasn't luxury, wasn't marble or silver walls, but little Mia snuggled against him like he was something warm, something safe. Sophie stood in the kitchen, messy hair tied in a loose bun, wearing an oversized sweater and holding 2 mugs, like she wasn't sure if offering them was too intimate or not enough. "You're up," she smiled shyly. "Coffee?" Ethan nodded, sitting up carefully so he wouldn't wake Mia. There was something about that tiny apartment. The clatter of the old kettle, pancake smell floating like a promise that wrapped around his heart so tight he couldn't ignore it. Sophie slid a mug to him across the coffee table and sat opposite, legs pulled to her chest, eyes studying him through the steam like she was afraid to believe good things lasted. "You didn't run off in the night," she whispered. Ethan let out a soft laugh. "I considered it, but Santa never leaves a job unfinished." She cracked a smile, one that reached her eyes for the first time. But behind it, worry. Like she'd lived too many disappointments to trust a miracle. Mia suddenly stirred, blinked, then shot upright like a rocket. "Santa stayed," she screamed. Her joy was loud, pure, like bells ringing. She climbed into Ethan's lap, hugging his neck with small arms that could break a grown man's heart. Ethan froze a second, not because he didn't want it, but because he wanted it too much. Sophie watched, chest rising slow like she was steadying her feelings. Mia bounced off to fetch crayons, announcing she would draw Santa's face before he disappears later. And just like that, the room shifted. The happiness dimmed, even if only in Sophie's eyes. Ethan heard it, that unspoken truth. Real life waits outside the door. Money struggles, work shifts, loneliness creeping back when the holiday magic ends. Ethan sipped coffee, hands warming around the mug, voice low. "I don't want to just disappear." Sophie paused mid-pancake flip, surprised. "Look, Ethan, last night was beautiful. But you're—" She gestured at his fancy watch, suit jacket on the chair. "You're from a different world. One with drivers and assistants and champagne parties. Mia and I, we're the grocery store coupon world, the second-hand toy world. And that's okay, but—" Ethan cut in gently. "Don't build walls for me. Let me decide if I want to stay." Sophie's gaze softened, then tightened like fear tugged it back. "People say they'll stay. They mean it in the moment. Then life comes." He didn't argue. He just looked at Mia, drawing him badly. Circle head, huge smile, crooked beard. And something inside him whispered, "Maybe I want to stay long enough for her to improve that drawing." Breakfast was chaos, syrup everywhere. Mia telling stories with pancake crumbs on her cheeks. Sophie laughing despite herself. And Ethan felt it again, that ache that wasn't pain, just realization. "This feels like home." When Mia finished eating, she sprinted to her room and came back with her tiny boots, jacket half-zipped. "We promised to feed birds today," she said, holding a bag of stale bread like a mission. Sophie shook her head, amused. "We didn't promise. You declared it." "Same thing," Mia insisted, taking Ethan's hand like she owned him now. So they went, out into the snow-bright morning, breath hanging like clouds. Ethan hadn't walked in snow for fun in years. Usually winter meant airports, boardrooms, deadlines. But here he was throwing breadcrumbs, with a kid who believed he was Santa. Mia giggled loud every time a bird swooped down, like it was magic happening right in front of her. And Sophie walked beside Ethan, steps quiet, hands deep in her pockets, eyes warm but guarded. "You know," Ethan said softly, watching Mia chase pigeons, "I've been to Christmas galas with ice sculptures taller than me, 5-course dinners, TV cameras, but none of it ever felt like this." Sophie looked up slowly. "Like what?" "Real." She inhaled sharply like truth hit harder than flirtation ever could. But just when the atmosphere softened into something hopeful, a sleek black car rolled up to the curb, tinted windows, luxury all over it. and Ethan's driver stepped out with perfect posture. Expensive coat, confusion written across his face. "Sir," he said, glancing at Sophie and Mia like this scene made no sense in his rich man reality. "Your meeting with investors begins in an hour. We need to go." The world crashed into the moment like cold water. Mia's smile faded. Sophie went still. Ethan exhaled slow. That life he'd tried to escape standing right in front of him. Two worlds colliding. His driver waited, eyes silently asking, "Why is he here?" Ethan knelt to Mia, voice gentle. "I have to step out for a bit, but I'll come back." Mia's eyes shimmered, with doubt childish but painfully true. "Promise?" Ethan swallowed. He knew promises mean something heavy to kids who've been disappointed. "I promise," he said, steady. Sophie watched, arms folded tight, not angry, just scared. Scared he'd walk out and become a memory. He stood turning to her. "Can I come back tonight? For cookies, for stories, for Christmas Part 2? Sophie searched his face long, like she needed to see if this was real or just holiday charity. Then she nodded slow, vulnerable, brave despite her fear. "If you come back, come because you want us, not because you feel sorry for us." Ethan met her gaze without flinching. "I want this. You. Her. This feeling." The driver cleared his throat, time pulling him away. Ethan stepped backward, eyes never leaving them. Got into the car, door closing like fate itself. Mia waved small, hopeful. Sophie stood behind her, heart in her eyes. Evening fell sharp and blue across the city, lights glowing like tiny miracles in every window. Ethan sat through the investor meeting, mind present only in body, heart still in that tiny apartment. With warm pancakes and a little girl who believed in him, people talked numbers, growth charts, expansion plans. But all he heard was Mia whispering, "Promise?" He left the boardroom before dessert even arrived, ignoring confused stares, stepping into the cold like a man, running toward something real for the first time in years. He didn't just take the car, he told the driver to take Christmas off. Grabbed a cab instead, holding a bag of groceries, hot cocoa mix, 2 teddy bears, just in case Mia's old one needed a friend, and something else, a small gift box that held more meaning than diamonds ever could. The cab rolled to Sophie's street, and there they were, Mia on the steps, coat half buttoned like she'd been waiting since he left, nose red from cold, clutching her original teddy bear. The moment she saw him, she sprinted so fast her boots slipped on the snow, but Ethan caught her mid-run like she weighed nothing. "You came back," she breathed into his neck, voice small and disbelieving. Ethan hugged her tight, and it felt like hugging back life itself. Sophie stood behind her, arms crossed but eyes shining, worry melting like snow under sunlight. "You're early," she whispered like time suddenly mattered again. Ethan laughed, breath foggy in the freezing night. Couldn't risk Santa losing his spot. He lifted the bags. "Round 2, if you'll have me." Sophie bit her lip, that hint of a smile trying to be brave. "Only if you're here as Ethan, not Santa, not CEO, just you." Ethan stepped closer, hard on his sleeve for once in his life. "That's all I want to be." They went inside together. No grand fireworks. Just soft warmth, laughter, the kind that cracks open walls without force. They baked cookies, terribly shaped but loved anyway. Ethan read Mia stories, voice deep and patient, while Sophie watched him like she was memorizing how hope looks. When Mia finally fell asleep on the couch, head resting against Ethan's arm like she'd always belonged there, Sophie sat beside him, close enough their shoulders touched. "Why us?" she whispered. Ethan didn't give a speech. He just looked around, the cheap Christmas lights, the scent of cinnamon, Mia's tiny hand still gripping his sleeve, and said, "Because this feels more like home than my entire penthouse ever did," Sophie sucked in a breath, hand trembling like she wanted to hold his but feared losing everything if she did. So Ethan took her hand gently, slow like a promise, instead of a grab, and then he opened the small box he brought, heart racing like he was 16 again, asking for something he wasn't sure he deserved. But inside wasn't a ring, too soon for that. Instead, a silver key with a red ribbon tied around it. "This isn't to my place," he said. It's to a new one. If you want, a house? Big enough for cookies, bedtime stories, maybe even a puppy someday. No pressure, only possibility. Sophie stared, eyes filling so fast she blinked hard just to keep breathing. Ethan, that's huge. He smiled soft, voice almost shaking. So was the way you and Mia made a stranger feel seen. I don't want to buy my way in. I want to earn it. Day by day, if you let me. And for a moment that stretched warm and endless, silence held them. Mia shifted in her sleep, and Sophie finally, slowly, nodded. Not like a fairy tale, yes, but a real one. Then stay. Not for Christmas. Not for tonight. Stay for mornings, for burnt pancakes, for life. Ethan let out a breath. He'd been holding for years, and pulled her into his arms, gentle, grateful, home. Snow fell outside like confetti from the universe itself, and the camera of memory would have zoomed out. But Mia woke first, tiny voice cutting through the magic. Is Santa staying forever? She mumbled half asleep, rubbing her eyes. Ethan knelt in front of her, tears in his voice, but a smile stretching anyway. Not Santa, he whispered. Just Ethan, and if your mom agrees, yeah, I'd like forever. Mia hugged him so tight he swore pieces of his old life fell off onto the floor. The empty penthouse, the lonely dinners, the cold success. Sophie wrapped her arms around them both, forehead resting on Ethan's shoulder, and the small living room glowed brighter than any gala ballroom he'd ever stood in. No tuxedos, no investors, no headlines, just a Christmas miracle built from kindness, courage, and a little girl who believed lonely people shouldn't stay lonely. As they decorated cookies one last time before bed, Mia giggled and said, "This is the best Santa night ever." Ethan kissed the top of her head. Best night of my life. And with that, Christmas didn't end. It just became the beginning of something new, something worth waking up for. If you're still listening, don't forget, sometimes love doesn't enter with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives wrapped in a small child's voice saying, "Come inside," and everything changes.